Well, I'm going to say this. Probably you probably heard this story before. This is old Putin the cat. He's going to get out of here for a second. But you heard about the susceptibility of the grid, the electrical grid. And a lot of people have this scenario in their head. It could be an EMP attack, we call it a high altitude aerial burst, and it knocks out all electricity. But a lot of people don't realize the actual way that the electrical grid is susceptible is through the World Wide Web. And this is per former CIA Director James Woolsey. And I just read something on Forbes, but I read other things before this. And actually, I have two generators. I have one that's a diesel. I know it's by ETQ. It's a knockoff of a Yanmar diesel, a Japanese diesel. It depends on how lucky you are on the quality, whether it lasts or not. It seems to be good to me. I also have a gasoline one with a Vanguard engine in it. It's a good engine actually, and some little small solar panels and things. But the actual World Wide Web is where the vulnerability through the electrical grid is. And he says it's constantly being attacked, but just using a little common sense 101, because a lot of people say, oh, that'll never happen. But in the United States, it seems like the educational levels are going down more and more. And there are more people with getting degrees, high engineers, high-tech, MBAs, in computer science and engineering, than there is the entire population of the United States. There's more people getting degrees in these types of fields in Asia than the entire population of the United States. So the brain power is definitely there. So if you have some evil people that want to knock down the United States power grid system, they can easily, I think not easily, but it could be done at some time in the future through the World Wide Web. You wouldn't even need a missile. You wouldn't need nothing fancy. It could just happen. So what James Woolsey, former CIA Director Woolsey, is saying is a lot of people should have backup power. And, I was actually always harped on this crap for a long time, too. But I have several things. But even if you just have like a couple solar panels and a cheap generator, say a 1,000 watt or 1,500 watt portable generator, it's better than nothing. Because having no electricity versus having maybe 10 to 15% of your normal usage makes a major difference. You can actually get by with, say, 10% of the electricity that you use, and you'll survive. It'll be inconvenient as all hell maybe, but you'll survive because you realize you can actually cut down a lot. Because as long as you have some electricity, you can refrigerate, you can cook, you can light, you can do various things. Maybe I have an electric well or something like that. I can get water that way. Purify things. Use different hand tools or whatever you need to do. But if you have absolutely no electricity, you just went back to a primitive state. And a lot of people don't realize that the World Wide Web is actually a vulnerable area for the electrical system. That's how they have it set up. They're doing everything on the web. And I know it's highly secure, but considering the brain power that comes out of like India and China, I know they're not really our enemies in the West and all that type of stuff, but if something happens, it can always be like, hey, who knows who did it, right? Where did the attack come from? Because actually the brain power, I think, of the Asians is going to far exceed what's in the West in the near future, because they're graduating far more people in higher levels of education, computer science, engineering, MBAs, or whatever, than the entire population in the United States. They've got more people coming out in Asia with degrees than the entire population of the United States. And you know what that's going to put basically the West back in primitive territory. And I guess, the simplest thing to do would be some type of an attack like that. So it could be. You never know. But, it's almost like this. If you don't do this ahead of time, it's not like you want to be like a drama freak and worry about it every day. But if you don't do it ahead of time and you do absolutely nothing, and if something occurs, you're like totally screwed. It's like one of those things, like, it's almost like insurance, What do I need insurance for? But at least with this type of insurance, it's more or less a one-time, payment. You make you just buy some things like solar panels and generators and stuff like that. And once it's done, it's done. You don't pay any more insurance after that. The other thing that James Woolsey was talking about was natural gas cars. And actually, I have a natural gas car, but it was used. I bought it, it was government leftover or something like that. It was fairly old, but it had like low mileage, like 22,000 miles on it. Actually, I'll probably add a clip onto this just to show what it is. But they had this stuff for years. And actually, natural gas is so cheap compared to compressed natural gas. It's so cheap compared to regular gasoline. But if we had something like that, if there was ever, we would be basically totally energy independent. But General Motors actually sold these cars before years ago, and then they stopped selling because the public didn't buy them. So, whose fault is that, right? But anyway, actually I'm going to add a little clip onto this to show you like what I have. And, this it's so convenient. I'll explain to you. But, it's amazing that the public didn't catch on to this. But the problem is, it's not so much the public. It's the fact that there isn't natural gas stations around. So this is another area where we're vulnerable because, if the United States is fairly energy independent, but still, if there's a disruption of any kind of supplies coming in, from the Middle East, I know it's a small percentage, but that small percentage will make a major difference. But, if there's any kind of disruption of supplies coming in, if we were on natural gas too, we'd be totally 100% independent on energy, and it would be a lot cleaner. But they don't do this because they don't provide the infrastructure, and the infrastructure is not there. Well, it's actually there because all the pipes are there. It's very easy to actually do all the gas stations. I think it is a conspiracy by the oil companies, but that's another thing that James Woolsey says would be very smart to do. And if you actually have natural gas vehicles, dual purpose, like dual hybrid type vehicles and stuff, you'd be doing much better. And I'll show you what I have, but that's another recommendation he makes for energy independence of the United States, besides the potential problem where the actual the electrical grid is controlled by the World Wide Web. So we are actually vulnerable to cyber attacks, believe it or not. That's crazy, ain't it? That is crazy. And a lot of people don't think about it. They think about, the Red Dawn situation where there's going to be this big, explosion in the sky. No, it just could be hackers. Hackers can bring down the grid, and they're trying to do it all the time. But, I always think to myself, the smartest people in the world are probably not going to be in the United States in the future, considering the number of graduates that are coming out of Asia versus the number of graduates that are coming out of America. So, in the higher end sciences. So I think our World Wide Web is going to be very, very vulnerable to attack, which thus will be our electrical grid system. So anyway, just want to add a little clip onto here. I'll show you what a hybrid vehicle is too. A different type of hybrid vehicle. This is a compressed natural gas vehicle, which is standard from Chevrolet. This is a 2003 Cavalier, and it's got pretty low mileage on it still. I used it some. It's got about 50,000. I got it with 22,000 on it. But you can put CNG in it, compressed natural gas, up to about 3,600 pounds, or gasoline. It runs in either. What happens is, when you use the gasoline on it, you fill it up with gasoline. It's got the standard 14-gallon tank, and it uses up the gasoline until it runs out, and then it goes on to CNG automatically. So what it has is this big tank in here. That's the one disadvantage to it, because what happens is it runs out. It takes up some more room in your trunk. But it's all automatic. It's all automatic. So you can fill it up with just CNG and just run it all the time on this, and it'll still run, and it runs about the same mileage. If the car is tuned specifically for CNG, it actually has a little more power. It runs cleaner. It's a lot cheaper. It's like $1.50 a gallon. This is one of the things they've been harping on. They could do this right now immediately in this country, and you can see this is a regular standard General Motors car for energy independence, and they don't do it. So conspiracy, that's all I gotta say. But the only disadvantage is you have this thing in your trunk, And when you fill this up to 3,500 pounds, it's a 6-gallon equivalent. So you'd have 14 gallons in a regular gas tank, and you have 6 gallons in this, so you have 20 gallons of fuel. About good 30 miles to the gallon easy, so you got 600-mile range easily. Probably on a highway more than that, probably 700 miles, no problem for the whole thing. So, it's seamless. There's nothing to change under the hood. There's no switch to go do anything. You fill it up with gasoline, you use it like a regular car, and then when it runs out of gas, if you have CNG in it, it goes into CNG, compressed natural gas, automatically. So this is one of the things that former CIA Director James Woolsey's talking about. And they could have done this 2003. They were making these cars in the 90s and stuff. So there's a conspiracy by the oil companies. That's all I can say. It probably is, for real.